Hello everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp and to, well, another episode of us testing the worst games on Nintendo Switch. We're going to go through 4, Rime, Stranded Deep, Mutant Year Zero and The Outer Wilds.
Yeah, do check out part 1 if you haven't seen it. In that one, Mark looked at Black Sad and Balan Wonderworld.
Yeah.
That's a bad game in every respect, isn't it? But yeah, there'll be a card to that in the top right hand corner. But do these games improve on the Switch 2? Well, let's find out.
This episode is sponsored by Front Mission 3 Remake. We actually covered both the previous games on the channel, so you can go check those out. But it's a tactical RPG set in the future where nations and corporations compete for dominance using mechs, which here are known as Wanzers.
Absolutely. The game follows 2 diverging storylines based on an early choice that you'll make, with both narratives focusing on a global conspiracy involving secret weapons, corporate greed, and nationalistic agenda.
Originally released in 1999 in Japan and 2000 in the rest of the world on PlayStation, this remake sees a number of changes. You've got improved graphics and animations, giving it a more modern look. They've reorchestrated the music, which is always a nice touch. You can customize the camo of your Wanzer, Glen, and you have a new quick combat mode that allows you to jump straight into the action.
Front Mission 3 Remake will sell for £31.49 or your regional equivalent.
We will have a full dedicated video on this one as well. But a thank you to the publishers for sponsoring this episode. Check out the links in the description and the top pinned comment. All right, let's kick off then with The Outer Wilds. Now, not to be mistaken for The Outer Worlds.
Yep, which we have also covered, haven't we?
Which we have also covered and which had atrocious performance when it launched. This one is essentially like a sandbox. I don't even know what you'd call it, like a solar system. And then you go out on adventures, you pilot your ship, which has real physical properties. And then every planet has its own gravity and stuff. And you kind of got to go out, learn about their secrets. It's very open-ended. Almost to its detriment at times, you know, where you're scratching your head like, what on earth am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
But as far as performance when it launched, it had, I mean, it was a difficult game to run and it took them a long time to bring it across. And then when we did get it, I think it's fair to say that performance drops were more often than not. Like there's one planet where you get sucked into its like gravity and it just tanked. It was quite poor. They patched it a few times. In fact, they patched it a lot of times on Switch 1 to a state where it was okay, but I was interested to see how it would run on Switch 2 now. And yeah, it can hit its 30 frames per second target way more often. It's one of those where the line's kind of consistent almost all of the time. What it doesn't do, you know what I'm gonna say?
Get its frame pacing right?
Correct. Yeah, it doesn't get its frame pacing quite right just yet. You see those big spikes and you feel them. It's like, oh, okay. I think things like load times are a lot better comparatively. Again, you're looking at over, double the speed. So that's good. But it's those, what is it about that hitching that makes it so noticeable?
I think frame pacing is a very difficult thing to describe, isn't it? Frame rate can be quite obvious to show.
Yeah.
If it stutters, big huge stutters, it's very obvious to show someone. Frame pacing, it just doesn't quite feel consistent to your eye, and that does translate down to your stomach almost, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny, but doing these videos, half the games have been making me feel quite sick.
Yeah, you can bring that queasiness on. But yeah, so there is a distinction between the two, frame rate and frame pacing. You can have a game that has the frame rate be quite consistent, but if its pacing is off in terms of how those images are flashed up, then it can still cause some almost distress to the eye.
100%. So visual quality, well, I'll let you be the judge. Maybe a few minor differences, but it was quite a dark game, so you didn't notice a huge amount in that department anyway. But as I say, load times improved. A nicer way to play it, but not perfect. Next up we have Stranded Deep. Now, do you remember this one?
Yeah, I do. When you first said it to me, I couldn't, but this is the game that you gave 0 value to, isn't it, in your review?
Look, mistakes may or may not have been made. Yeah, it was one of those where, and again, we are just two people, sometimes things annoy you. And you may be a little bit too harsh. This may or may not be one of those times. Yeah, I reviewed it. I'll show you the snippet of review. You can tell I'm just, I'm pretty pained by the game because of the performance, and it was expensive as well. And I think well, you'll see. The higher prices with lower performance does get a little bit grating. It's even more so when the game is released stealth drop with no reviews available for anyone, and the trailer doesn't match the game you've got. I didn't like it. I wasn't happy. It was a shocker. So revisiting it, you realize the areas that haven't improved and never will without a patch. So I was looking down at the ground in this one area, and like, you know where you have low res textures?
Yes.
This goes beyond that. They're like individual pixels.
Oh wow. Okay.
Just spattered in random patterns, and it just looks ridiculous. So that's still there. The resolution is higher, definitely. Like, it looks crisper. Performance, 30 FPS, but again, frame pacing issues are still prevalent. It's just, you can't really seem to avoid them in these first couple of games. Your eye just sees it. But if you want to play it, yes, it's very playable. It's not a zero value. I think I already did correct that in a all patched up episode.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, it's actually quite a good survival game. So yeah, I think I want to move away from it as quickly as possible.
Let's just move on.
Yeah, never talk about it again.
Yeah.
See you later, past me. Good job. The next one is one that's been asked for a lot since the game originally came out. People would constantly be saying in the all patched up episode, are you going to revisit Mutant Year Zero? Seemed to be a game that had a really big following, but well, it looked terrible at launch. I wish I'd just shown you this.
Yeah, I've seen the after, not the before, haven't I? Yeah.
At launch, it was so blurry, like nothing we'd seen, and it had a lot of people scratching their heads, you know, is the Switch massively underpowered?
Yeah.
They were probably right.
Yeah.
Really. You know, if we're being honest, like, it was just punching well above its weight from day one. And in this example, I don't necessarily think that was the case. I think optimization played a huge part.
This is a big part of that question, isn't it? Yes, it probably was underpowered even for its time, albeit it did try something new with the hybrid nature.
Yeah.
But then you have poor optimization, and when they're together, it's recipe for a disaster, isn't it?
It absolutely is. This is another game as well that had these ridiculous load times. I remember sitting there thinking the game had broken. There was only one other game that was worse in the history of the Switch.
Right.
And that was, do you remember that game called Pine?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Pine,
that had a load time where, just to prove a point, I had the loading in the corner of the screen from the start of the review, and it only loaded after, I think it was 8 minutes.
8 minutes?
Yeah.
That's outrageous. 8 minutes? Oh dear. I mean, I lived through the era of Commodore 64 and loading up tapes, so it's not unheard of to me, but that was 35 years ago, you know?
Absolutely, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But we stuck with that game, and in fairness, the developers did as well, didn't they? And gradually improved it.
They did, yeah.
Mutant Year Zero, not so much. Like, it didn't see loads and loads of patches. Maybe like 1 or 2. So on Switch 2 then, this is one of the biggest changes I've seen.
Nice, okay.
Like, this looks crispy. The resolution, well, look, you need to, crispy in air quotes, right? The resolution is much closer to native. The image, you can see it. The performance, it actually moves quite smoothly. In terms of a whole package, it's one of the best improvements I think I've seen.
Nice.
I don't know about the load times, but I'm sure they've improved. I don't think we've seen any examples yet where it hasn't got better on Switch 2.
Yeah, that seems to be one of those things that just naturally happens, doesn't it? As you would expect, of course.
The final one then, and a game that is quite close to our hearts really, because we hadn't played it previous to the Switch, and we just enjoyed it, didn't we?
Yes.
It's a game called Rime.
Yeah. So this was one of the earlier releases on the Switch, I seem to remember. Maybe 2018 off the top of my head. And as you say, hadn't played it before anywhere else. And I can completely acknowledge its performance issues that it had. They were notorious at the time, and quite difficult to get through as you were playing. But I loved the game, yes. The story, the atmosphere, I guess, the overriding allegory for the story, if you like, so much that I was quite happy to kind of overlook those issues. But man, it'll be nice to go back and play it as it hopefully is now, as we're going to look at on the Switch 2. Yeah,
there are a few areas, aren't there, where performance would really kind of drop down before.
Oh, it was, yeah, absolutely. There were, I remember like crossing a bridge, like this big bridge, and there were quite some action, heavy in air quotes moments where you're being attacked by things, and the frame rate was just dropping like considerably, you know, it was going into PowerPoint mode. And as I say, like me playing it in the mindset I was, could get past it, but if you paid for something and it's performing that badly, it's frustrating, isn't it, you know?
Yeah, especially so early into the Switch's life.
Yes.
And not a game that you're particularly thinking, well, this is taxing.
No, absolutely.
So I think for some people it was a bit of a concern,
Yeah.
you know, of things to come. And let's be real, just based on this series alone being a thing, it obviously was a thing.
It was definitely a thing. And it's one of those, like I just said, where if you're playing it in a certain mindset, you can look past it, but then when you do play it on more powerful hardware, I'm not even talking about the Switch 2, but even if back in the day you played it on more powerful hardware, just the difference it does make to your enjoyment is massive.
So yeah, as you'd expect, this one does hit its target now. You're looking at 30 frames per second, maybe a couple of minor stutters, but nowhere near what it was like before. And it just looks nice, doesn't it? Looks really good.
It does, and I know we're talking about 30 frames as if it's a magical number. We're not saying that.
No.
We're just saying it's nice to play a game as it was intended. Do you know what I mean? The world looks more vibrant. The resolution certainly looks a bit crisper. I do think it's a game that by design does want to have some, I don't know, blurred edges, for want of a better way of saying it, but they have sharpened up on the Switch 2, certainly when you compare it to the Switch 1. Yeah, it's just a nicer way to play a game that wasn't ever intended to be top of its specs, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's 4 more games that have seen improvements, some more so than others. We already have the next episode. Probably going to record it right now, actually.
Quite possibly, yeah.
And do stay tuned for that. Have we got a playlist for this series?
Well, we've only had 1 episode, so now there's 2. We'll create 1. Yeah.
Lovely stuff. If you'd like to save yourself a bit of bunts, go to switchup.gg where you can buy your eShop credit and you'll get 5% back in cashback.
Absolutely. There's also a link down there to PlayAsia. If you're looking to import any games, just use the link and the code stated and you get yourself 5% off of your purchase price from there too. Thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.